Imagine living a life where every day feels like it's on autopilot. You're busy, you're stressed, you're moving, but never truly getting anywhere. Back. What if I told you that the single shift in the way you think could completely flip your results, your energy, and your future? Most people never see it coming because it's not about working harder. It's not about luck. It's about rewiring your mind to take control of everything. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how that shift happens, and why it will change everything you thought you knew about success. The moment I realized that my life was entirely my responsibility, everything began to shift. For years, I blamed circumstances, people, and even luck for where I was. I told myself that opportunities would only come if conditions were perfect. Every excuse was like a weight keeping me anchored in stagnation. One day, it became clear that waiting for the perfect situation was pointless. Success was never about the environment. It was about how I responded to it. Take it back. The shift required brutal honesty with myself about my actions and choices. Taking ownership meant looking in the mirror and seeing both the problem and the solution. The realization was uncomfortable, but liberating. For the first time, I felt the power to shape my destiny. Before ownership, I approached life passively, reacting to events rather than directing them. I waited for permission to start, for others to validate my worth, or for luck to intervene. Every setback felt like an external attack rather than a learning opportunity. I underestimated how much influence I had over outcomes by surrendering control. Ownership demanded that I stop blaming circumstances for my results. It required acknowledging that inaction was a choice just as much as action. Every missed opportunity was my responsibility to own. When I accepted this, my mindset shifted from victimhood to agency. I began making deliberate choices, no longer hoping that life would hand me success. The clarity of control became intoxicating. The first step toward complete ownership was examining my habits. I realized that small, repeated actions had compounded effects I'd been ignoring. Neglecting discipline, avoiding hard conversations, and postponing growth had kept me stuck. Taking ownership meant accepting that I could change those patterns or face the consequences. I stopped blaming external pressures for procrastination or lack of progress. Every decision, no matter how trivial it seemed, mattered. I became aware that my comfort zone was a self-imposed prison. Choosing responsibility over excuses gave me leverage over the chaos around me. Suddenly, even mundane actions felt powerful because they were deliberate. Awareness became a tool, and choices became the building blocks of change. Ownership extended beyond daily habits into mindset itself. I recognized the stories I told myself about limitations and failures. I realized that believing life owed me something was a trap. Every narrative of blame was a narrative I could rewrite. I started reframing setbacks as feedback, not punishment. I questioned assumptions that had dictated my behavior for years. If I wanted to change outcomes, I first had to change the way I saw my power and potential. Responsibility wasn't burdensome. It was liberating. By taking control of my story, I began controlling my actions. The internal shift created external results that were undeniable. I felt capable, resilient, and unstoppable. Relationships were another mirror reflecting the need for ownership. I noticed how often I relied on others to approve, motivate, or guide me. I had been waiting for support that might never come. Accepting responsibility meant I had to cultivate self-reliance while still valuing collaboration. I learned that no one else could carry my dreams, and expecting them to was a form of surrender. When I stopped outsourcing my motivation, I began leading my life with intention. Every interaction became intentional rather than reactive. I developed boundaries that honored my growth and energy. Accountability to myself replaced the need for validation from others. By owning my journey, I became the architect of every connection and decision. Financial choices also revealed how little ownership I had exercised. For years, I blamed the economy, bosses, or circumstances for limitations. I hadn't examined my spending, saving, or investing habits with honesty. Taking responsibility meant tracking every dollar, decision, and opportunity with clarity. I asked myself hard questions. Where am I wasting energy? Where am I avoiding growth? How can I leverage what I already have? The answers required discipline and courage. I realized that wealth was a product of decisions, not chance. Ownership over finances translated into freedom of options and flexibility in life. Deliberate financial actions became a reflection of my commitment to accountability. Every choice reinforced the mindset shift I was cultivating. Even failures became tools for growth once I embraced ownership. Previously, mistakes led to shame, excuses, and blame. Now, I dissected every setback with curiosity and responsibility. I asked myself, what part of this did I control? What part could I improve? By taking full responsibility for outcomes, I transformed failure from fear into feedback. Each mistake illuminated a gap I could fill or a skill I could develop. Ownership eliminated the paralysis of self-pity and replaced it with action-oriented learning. Progress became measurable, predictable, and deeply satisfying. My confidence grew because I knew I had the power to course correct. Every failure became a stepping stone rather than a wall. Time management was another area transformed by this mindset. I realized I had been blaming busy schedules and external demands for lack of progress. Taking responsibility meant auditing my hours, choices, and priorities ruthlessly. Back. I had to accept that how I spent my time was entirely my control. Distractions were no longer innocent, they were decisions I owned. I began designing my days to maximize impact rather than react to obligations. Back. Every hour became a statement of my priorities and accountability. The freedom of control over time amplified every area of my life. The mindset shift was no longer theoretical, it was visible in tangible results. Back. I felt empowered, focused, and unstoppable. The mental shift of ownership required confronting fears and insecurities head on. I realized that I had often blamed fear for inaction. Owning my life meant embracing fear as a signal rather than a stop sign. I started taking calculated risks that aligned with my goals. Every challenge faced reinforced the belief that I could navigate uncertainty. Back. Fear became a teacher instead of a tyrant. Confidence was no longer dependent on external conditions, but rooted in competence and accountability. Ownership gave me courage because I knew I could respond rather than react. Each courageous action reinforced the mindset that I was capable of shaping outcomes. Empowerment became habitual and self-reinforcing. Finally, embracing ownership created a ripple effect in every part of life. Decisions became deliberate, actions became consistent, and results became predictable. I no longer waited for conditions to be perfect or for others to act first. Responsibility became a lens through which I approached opportunities, challenges, and relationships. I felt clarity, control, and momentum I had never experienced before. Every aspect of life reflected the mindset shift. Habits, finances, relationships, and self-belief. Ownership was no longer a choice, it became a default mode of living. The sense of personal agency permeated every decision. Life began to expand because I had stopped shrinking from responsibility. For years, I believed that working harder automatically meant achieving more. I measured success in hours, sweat, and exhaustion, thinking effort alone would produce results. I chased tasks relentlessly, filling my days with business, yet progress felt minimal. Then I realized that effort without direction was wasted energy. Back. True impact comes from leverage, not from how much you grind. I began analyzing which actions produce the biggest outcomes. The question became which efforts truly move the needle. I discovered that high leverage actions generated far more results than exhaustive effort. The shift required rethinking how I approached work entirely. Every decision became about multiplying influence rather than simply completing tasks. Leverage reshaped my approach to priorities and focus. I started identifying the 20% of actions that delivered 80% of results. This wasn't about cutting corners, it was about being strategic and intentional. Meetings, emails, and minor tasks were no longer my measure of productivity. I asked myself daily which actions amplify impact the most. Delegation became a tool, not a compromise. Automation became a pathway to efficiency. Resources that I once overlooked became catalysts for exponential progress. My energy shifted from reactive business to proactive, high-impact focus. The mindset pivot transformed how I viewed every opportunity, challenge, and task I faced. Time itself became a form of leverage I had ignored. I realized that spending 10 hours on something that could be done in 2 or delegated to someone more skilled was wasted potential. I started designing my days to maximize high leverage activities. Each hour was evaluated for return on investment rather than mere completion. This required discipline and ruthless prioritization. I eliminated distractions that offered comfort but no results. Every task was scrutinized for value creation rather than perception. I began treating my attention as a limited asset, focusing only on what mattered most. The results multiplied because my efforts aligned with the highest value outcomes. Efficiency became a force multiplier in every area of life. Leverage also meant building systems rather than relying solely on personal effort. I shifted from being the worker to being the strategist. Instead of doing everything myself, I created frameworks that produced consistent results without constant intervention. Processes, routines, and automation replaced repetitive manual work. Every system implemented reduced friction and increased output. Leverage amplified creativity because I was freed from mundane tasks. This mindset transformed not just productivity but vision. I could see beyond immediate tasks to long-term impact. Small, deliberate actions now carried compounded results over time. My life became structured for growth rather than just survival. I began applying leverage to relationships and networks. I realized that influence could be multiplied by connecting with the right people. Mentorship, collaboration, and partnerships created opportunities far beyond individual effort. I focused on providing value to those who could create mutual impact. Influence became a strategic tool rather than a passive hope. I stopped trying to do everything alone and instead leveraged collective resources. The energy I invested in relationships returned exponential results. My sphere of influence expanded, creating ripple effects I could never achieve alone. Leveraging people and ideas transformed both my opportunities and my confidence. Every connection became a lever for potential growth. Financial leverage was another dimension of the mindset shift. I stopped equating income with hours worked. I learned to deploy capital resources and skills to create scalable returns. Investments, entrepreneurship, and smart financial decisions amplified my impact without linear effort. Money became a tool, not a reward for toil. Every decision was evaluated for its multiplier effect rather than short-term gain. I started building structures where resources worked for me, not the other way around. Financial leverage created freedom and security simultaneously. The mindset moved from scarcity to strategy. Compounding returns became a reflection of high leverage thinking rather than luck. Leverage required learning to say no consistently. I realized that every low impact commitment diluted my energy back. I couldn't achieve high value results by agreeing to everything. Boundaries became essential tools, not barriers. I prioritized actions, people, and opportunities that offered real leverage. It back. Saying no felt uncomfortable at first, but the clarity it provided was invaluable. Each refusal reinforced focus and allowed energy to flow toward high impact areas. I learned that scarcity of attention was not a limitation but a guide. Leverage was not about doing more, it was about directing effort to multiply results. Every decision to prioritize became a decision to create momentum. The mindset of leverage reshaped my perception of risk and opportunity. Back, I began evaluating potential actions based on amplification rather than effort alone. Opportunities that seemed intimidating were assessed through the lens of multiplier effect. Back, if a small input could create enormous output, it became worth pursuing despite discomfort. I no longer avoided challenges because they required effort. I embraced them because they offered leverage. Calculated risks became pathways to outsized results. Each success reinforced the power of intentional focus over blind effort. The approach transformed how I viewed challenges, turning them into strategic opportunities. Back, leverage became a core principle guiding every decision I made. Applying leverage also demanded continuous learning and skill acquisition. I focused on developing abilities that could multiply impact rather than performing low-value tasks repeatedly. Knowledge, strategy, and execution skills became my most valuable assets. Back, I invested in myself because my growth amplified every effort I made. Each skill acquired became a force multiplier in work, relationships, and personal development. The mindset shifted from working harder to working smarter and strategically. Learning became a lever that multiplied potential outcomes far beyond immediate effort. Every investment in knowledge returned exponential returns over time. My trajectory accelerated as a result of intentional leverage-based growth. Ultimately, adopting leverage transformed both results and perspective. Back, I no longer measured success by busyness or effort alone. I evaluated every action for its potential to create disproportionate impact. Energy, time, relationships, back, and resources were all treated as tools to amplify outcomes. The mindset shift removed frustration with slow progress and replaced it with clarity, focus, and efficiency. High impact thinking became second nature, guiding every choice and action. Leverage created freedom, control, and momentum in ways that effort alone never could. Each step became deliberate, strategic, and multiplied. Life felt expansive, purposeful, back, and full of potential, all because I learned to think in terms of leverage instead of labor. For years, I avoided discomfort at all costs, believing that growth should feel easy. I chased comfort and security back, thinking success would arrive without struggle. Every challenge seemed like a threat instead of an opportunity. The realization came that avoiding discomfort was actually avoiding progress. Back, growth requires pushing past resistance, leaning into fear, and confronting challenges directly. I had to shift my mindset to see difficulty as a signal, not a warning. Back, discomfort became an indicator of opportunity rather than something to escape. Every time I stepped into uncertainty, I expanded my capacity. Challenges became fuel, not obstacles. Life began to feel more alive and purposeful as a result. Fear had always dictated my decisions without me noticing. I avoided risks, new experiences, and hard conversations. I measured security over potential growth, and in doing so, limited my impact. Confronting fear required deliberate action and persistence. I learned that the moment I felt resistance, I was precisely where growth lived. Back, each step into discomfort expanded my resilience. I started reframing fear as information, not judgment. The discomfort became a guidepost pointing toward necessary change. Back, I embraced challenges because they revealed my limits and potential. Each encounter with fear transformed from paralyzing to empowering, shaping a new mindset. Failure was something I once dreaded, associating it with shame and inadequacy. Every misstep felt like proof that I wasn't enough. The shift came when I started analyzing failure objectively, seeking lessons instead of judgment. I began asking, what part of this can I control? What can I improve next time? Each failure became a roadmap for growth rather than a stop sign. The discomfort of mistakes no longer held me back. It illuminated areas for improvement. I discovered that the path to mastery is paved with iterative failures. Each setback revealed strengths I hadn't recognized. I redefined failure as feedback, not defeat. Back. This mindset transformed challenges into opportunities for exponential learning. Growth required leaving behind the illusion of certainty. I realized that waiting for perfect timing or complete safety was a trap. Back. The world rewards those willing to take bold, calculated steps despite discomfort. Every risk I embraced taught me more than every safe choice I had made. I began to anticipate challenges rather than avoid them. Back, each obstacle encountered was a chance to test limits and expand capabilities. The mindset of embracing discomfort demanded courage and intentionality. I stopped asking whether something would be easy and started asking whether it would move me forward. Challenges became measurable tests of resolve. Resilience became cultivated, not incidental, shaping every decision I made. The relationship with discomfort reshaped my daily habits and routines. I noticed I had been choosing ease over effectiveness for years. Back, I replaced convenience with actions that stretched my capabilities. Each time I embraced the uncomfortable, I gained a skill, insight, or perspective I couldn't have obtained otherwise. Back, discomfort became synonymous with opportunity and a sign that I was on the right path. I learned to seek challenges rather than shy away from them. Back. Every deliberate choice to act despite resistance strengthened self-trust. I stopped avoiding hard conversations, physical challenges, or difficult decisions. Growth became habitual as I leaned into discomfort consistently. Life expanded as I learned to navigate uncertainty with confidence. The shift also demanded resilience in the face of criticism and resistance. For years, I avoided feedback that felt uncomfortable or exposed flaws. I realized that external discomfort often points to internal growth opportunities. Criticism became a mirror, reflecting gaps I could address. It back. Resistance became evidence that I was pushing boundaries. Each encounter with discomfort built emotional strength and sharpened judgment. I learned to tolerate uncertainty and navigate tension without retreating. Back, growth became less about comfort and more about persistence under pressure. Every challenge, critique, or obstacle became a tool for self-improvement. The mindset shifted from avoidance to engagement. Back, creating momentum for continuous growth. Discomfort extended to taking responsibility for outcomes in every area of life. I realized that avoiding accountability was a form of comfort seeking, and owning failures and results required facing uncomfortable truths about effort and choices. Each time I took responsibility, I strengthened control over my trajectory. Avoidance only delayed growth. Back, while confronting reality accelerated it. I embraced challenges because they revealed patterns and areas for improvement. The mindset required honesty with myself and courage to act despite fear. Each uncomfortable decision reinforced confidence and competence. Life became a series of deliberate, sometimes difficult actions rather than passive reactions. Growth was now inseparable from embracing discomfort intentionally. Physical and mental challenges became opportunities to solidify this mindset. I tested limits through new skills, exercise, and demanding experiences. Every time I pushed beyond perceived boundaries, I expanded my belief in what was possible. Discomfort became a teacher, showing me where limits existed and how to overcome them. The lessons extended beyond performance to mindset, resilience, and self-discipline. I learned that repeated exposure to discomfort rewired my brain to respond with action, not avoidance. Growth became predictable because I cultivated the ability to face difficulty repeatedly. Fear and resistance were no longer barriers, they were indicators of progress. Every challenge encountered reinforced the power of intentional discomfort. The approach required redefining success and progress. I stopped expecting ease or immediate rewards. True growth is uncomfortable and often delayed, requiring patience and persistence. Each uncomfortable situation became a marker for personal evolution. I learned to embrace delayed gratification and the discomfort it entails. The mindset encouraged exploration of uncharted territory and experimentation with risk. I began to measure progress by lessons learned rather than comfort maintained. Discomfort became a constant companion, guiding me toward growth opportunities. I learned to value challenges more than outcomes. Each step taken into difficulty compounded confidence and competence. Ultimately, embracing discomfort became a framework for navigating life. I realized that avoiding fear, failure, and challenge only limited potential. Every difficult experience became fuel for personal and professional evolution. I learned to anticipate resistance, confront it intentionally, and extract lessons from it. Discomfort was no longer a threat, but a signal of meaningful action. Each choice to lean into difficulty strengthened resilience, clarity, and capability. Life became richer, more dynamic, and full of growth opportunities. The mindset of embracing discomfort transformed challenges into stepping stones rather than obstacles. Every decision was shaped by the principle that growth resides on the other side of discomfort. Momentum was created through repeated, deliberate engagement with the hard. I realized that lasting change never comes from focusing solely on behavior. For years, I tried forcing habits without addressing who I was at my core. Behavior is temporary, but identity shapes every decision, action, and outcome. I started asking myself, who do I need to become to create the results I want? The shift was profound because once I answered, every action aligned naturally with that vision. Identity became the foundation for sustainable growth, not just a tool for short-term wins. Habits followed effortlessly once I adopted the mindset of who I wanted to be. Small actions became expressions of my identity rather than chores. Every choice started to feel purposeful, deliberate, and empowering. This realization was the turning point that changed everything. Before this shift, I focused on outcomes without addressing the person required to achieve them. I wanted success, recognition, and progress, but I hadn't examined my internal framework. Results felt inconsistent because my identity didn't match my ambitions. I began to consciously redefine myself as someone who embodies discipline, resilience, and focus. Each decision became a reflection of this new identity. Accountability was no longer external, it was internalized. Habits became automatic extensions of who I believed I was. Challenges that once felt insurmountable became manageable because I approached them as the person I wanted to be. The shift to identity-based growth created alignment between desire and action. Results became inevitable because they were the natural outcome of who I had become. The process required introspection and intentional design of self-image. I examined my beliefs, internal narratives, and assumptions. Every limiting belief was questioned, reframed, and replaced with a principle aligned with my desired identity. I asked what traits define the person I aspire to be, what actions will reinforce this identity daily. Back. Consistency became effortless because I was no longer chasing abstract goals. I was living in alignment with my identity. The internal narrative rewired my motivation from external validation to internal alignment. Back. Growth felt natural because it emerged from identity rather than forced effort. Each choice became deliberate and progress became measurable and sustainable. The mind started serving the vision instead of resisting it. Back. Accountability transformed when rooted in identity. I stopped waiting for systems, people, or circumstances to enforce discipline. The question was no longer, what should I do? But who am I being right now? Every action reflected either alignment or misalignment with my identity. Misalignment highlighted areas for growth rather than triggering shame or guilt. Ownership of choices became internalized and empowering. The mindset shift meant that responsibility was automatic, not optional. Back. Consistency increased because the habits were now identity-driven rather than externally imposed. I felt freedom in alignment and discomfort when deviating, which became a guide to course correct. Back. Identity created a natural compass for every decision and action I took. Challenges tested the authenticity of this identity shift. I noticed that under stress, old habits and behaviors would resurface. Back. The difference was that I now had a framework to respond intentionally. I asked myself, what would the person I aspire to be do in this situation? Decisions became values-based, not reaction-based. Each difficult moment reinforced the importance of identity as the driver of action. Discipline, patience, and resilience became inherent traits rather than temporary efforts. Back. Growth was no longer dependent on comfort or external motivation. The identity lens guided me through uncertainty, setbacks, and pressure. Each challenge became a confirmation of alignment rather than a test of endurance. Back. Living as the person I aimed to become made each obstacle an opportunity. This mindset reshaped how I approached learning and skill development. I realized that acquiring knowledge and abilities was effective only if it reinforced the identity I was cultivating. Skills were no longer pursued as arbitrary achievements, but as tools that reflected the person I was becoming. Growth became multidimensional, mental, emotional, and behavioral simultaneously. The process was deliberate. Back. Every new skill reinforced traits aligned with my desired identity. Motivation was intrinsic because it was tied to personal evolution rather than external reward. Back. Learning became a habit because it reflected who I was at my core. Progress was measurable in actions rather than just results. Each step reinforced the person I wanted to be, creating a compounding effect. The identity became both the source and the outcome of continuous improvement. Relationships and interactions were transformed by this identity-based approach. I stopped seeking validation and started engaging authentically as the person I aspired to be. Boundaries, respect, and alignment replaced people-pleasing and compromise. Back. Influence increased because actions were consistent with values, not swayed by external pressures. Collaboration became more meaningful as it was grounded in mutual respect and shared growth. Conflicts became opportunities to demonstrate integrity and emotional intelligence. Identity acted as a stabilizer in social dynamics, guiding responses rather than reacting impulsively. Trust, respect, back, and credibility grew naturally. Living in alignment created consistency in relationships and amplified personal and professional impact. Each interaction became intentional, reflecting identity and purpose. Back. The shift also impacted goal setting and execution. Goals were no longer isolated targets, but natural outcomes of the person I was becoming. I no longer chased results without considering alignment with identity. Each goal was evaluated, does this reflect who I want to be? Actions became consistent, deliberate, and purposeful. Motivation was no longer fragile because it was tied to intrinsic identity rather than external outcomes. Progress became predictable and sustainable. Failures were reframed as signals for recalibration rather than evidence of inadequacy. Consistency was maintained through alignment, not through willpower alone. Each milestone reached reinforced the identity framework, creating a cycle of growth and achievement. Every day became a reflection of identity-based decisions. Small choices, seemingly insignificant, carried weight because they were consistent with who I was becoming. Morning routines, work habits, and personal interactions all reflected alignment. Momentum accumulated naturally as behaviors reinforced identity continuously. The framework removed friction from decision-making, creating clarity and focus. Energy was no longer wasted on resisting old patterns because the new identity felt authentic. Motivation became automatic because it was rooted in self-concept rather than obligation. Habits became effortless extensions of personal identity. Each day reinforced growth, alignment, and purpose. Life became more streamlined, intentional, and fulfilling. Ultimately, embracing identity as the driver of growth transformed both results and experience. I realized that the person you become determines the outcomes you produce. External effort alone is temporary, but identity sustains long-term success. Actions became aligned, habits automatic, and decisions consistent with purpose. Life felt more integrated because internal and external worlds matched. Confidence grew naturally, rooted in authentic self-concept rather than external validation. Challenges became opportunities to demonstrate alignment and reinforce identity. Growth accelerated because every choice was deliberate and purposeful. Living as the person I aspired to be created both freedom and clarity. The transformation was complete. Identity became the engine driving every action, every habit, and every result